how much do you black girls pay for braids?
How much do you white pay for coke and clip-ins?
The how much do you black girls pay for braids girl is racist.
The fuck is this black people in her comments defending her when she just called us a bunch of niggas? For y'all be like, oh, she didn't say it like that. No, she did say it like that. She said, how much you black bitch pay for braids? That's like what she said. That's what I heard.
Why do you white people care how much we pay to get our hair done? Do you white people plan on getting braids or something?
I don't like the tone of this video at all. And I know that this video is going viral, but I don't even think she's coming from a place of genuine curiosity.
It was the you.
That if at any time when you are making an apology, you feel it is necessary to say, I apologize if I've caused harm, or I apologize if I caused offense, it's no longer an apology, right? You have already been told that it's harmful. You have already been told that it's offensive. So you choosing to use the word if it is, when we already have established that it is offensive and harmful, is a choice.
There are things you can say on the internet that will get you criticized. And then there are things you can say that will have people calling you racist, making response videos about you, stitching your video, and apparently in this case, sending you rape threats. Yes, and according to this creator, all of this happened because of two words. Yes, two words. Black girls. Yes, you heard me correctly. A white TikTok creator asked a question about black women's hair, and somehow that question turned into a full-blown internet controversy. But before we get into it, I want to make something very clear. This isn't a video about telling black people how they're supposed to feel. If someone heard that video and felt uncomfortable, that's their reaction. You know, but what makes this situation interesting is that there are clearly two completely different interpretations of the same exact sentence. Some people heard racism, other people heard a woman asking a completely normal question about the price of braids, and I think that difference is worth unpacking. So let's get right into it. Let's start from the beginning. So there's a creator who goes by the name of Shecrets. She made a video talking about the price of braids. She had apparently seen someone in Los Angeles asking whether there were braiders who charged less than $400, and she was shocked. So she made a video asking black women how much they typically pay for their braids, and honestly, that's where the internet exploded. This is the video.
I have a question. How much do you black girls pay for braids? I'm so curious on what the price of the maintenance of that is, because I just saw someone on Instagram post. They was in LA, but it was like, are there any braiders that charge less than $400? Do you not have to get those braids redone every 3 weeks? $400 on hair every 3 weeks? You can't be serious.
And that's it. That's the video. There's no racial slur. There's no insult towards black women. She's simply asking about the price of braids. But obviously, that's not what everyone heard. The part that immediately caught people's attention was the way she said, how much do you black girls pay for braids? People weren't necessarily focused on the $400. They were focused on the wording, specifically the combination of you, black, and girls. Some people felt like she placed an unnecessary emphasis on the word black, and once that interpretation started spreading, the entire conversation changed. It was no longer, wait, why are braids $400? It became, why did this white woman say black girls like that?
How much do you black girls pay for your braids?
You see what I mean about the way some of them say the word black? Same way that the people in Harry Potter, same way the Malfoys say Potter. You gotta pop them consonants. Something about that don't sit well in my spirit. What is that? What is that?
I have a question. How much do black girls pay for braids? Let me try that again. I have a question. How much do black girls pay for braids? You hear the difference? Or how about, I have a question. How much do black girls pay for braids? Because blah, 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 whatever, okay?
And this is where I think we need to slow down a little bit, because there are actually two separate questions here. The first is, was what she said offensive? And the second is, did she intend to be offensive? Those are not necessarily the same question, and the internet had very different answers. The comments on this particular video were divided. Some black women were genuinely confused by the backlash. One person basically said, as a black girl, I'm confused. What did I miss? Another one said, what term do you want her to use? We are black girls. And someone else joked, acting like she said the N-word. And honestly, those comments tell you something important. There were black people watching this and genuinely thinking, wait, what exactly did she do? Because black is not a slur. Black women call themselves black women. There is inherently nothing offensive about the word. So for those people, the controversy seemed completely ridiculous.
You black? It wasn't racist, okay? It was not racist. When I watched it, I was like, neck crack. That was it. I was like, oh. I think it was also the how much do you black. It was like the you black that got me. I was like,
When did the word black become a slur?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, bro. Y'all niggas are dragging it with this one, bro. After official review, I watched that video several times, bro.
And to the girl who was like, how much do you black girls pay for your braids? It wasn't racist. It was just weird.
But then there were people who believed the problem wasn't the word black itself. It was the way she used it. One commentator said, why did you say black girls though? And that's an important distinction because nobody is seriously arguing that the word black itself is racist. The question is whether the wording, the tone, and context created a racialized meaning. And that's where things get complicated because the argument wasn't white people can't say black. It was, why did you specifically say you black girls like that? And that tiny word you became incredibly important because phrases like you people have historically been used in racist ways. So I understand why someone might hear that worded and feel uncomfortable, but understanding why someone interpreted something negatively is not the same as proving that that person intended it negatively. And that distinction is basically what this entire controversy became about. But there was another side to this. After the backlash started, people began pointing at something else about the original video. Apparently, Cher has a habit of emphasizing random words when she speaks. I actually went through her profile and yes, she has the habit of emphasizing words. That's just how she speaks and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Step 1 is a Sachi lip stain in hazel. How long it takes me to get ready? It's 10:35 right now. I'm putting on my serum. 10:36 and I'm brushing my brows. 10:37. 10:38.
Hey there, buddy! Sorry if the playlists, 4 different ones by the way, weren't enough for you. Nor the fact, if you search up Shayla Kratz Glute Day, you probably get 25 different videos of my routine.
Bueno, yo tengo otra cuenta para hablar en español, pero esta cuenta yo quiero convertir.
And if you actually listen to the original video, she isn't only emphasizing the word black. She emphasizes other words throughout the sentence too. Words like price, curious, and especially maintenance.
Question, how much do black girls pay for braids? I'm so curious on what the price of the maintenance of that is.
So if that really is her normal speaking pattern, that adds another layer to this situation because there's a difference between I naturally emphasize certain words when I speak and I specifically emphasize the word black because I was making a racial distinction. Those are two very different things, and unless you can get inside someone's head, you cannot know their intention with absolute certainty, which is why I think the conversation gets much more interesting when we stop pretending this is completely obvious. Because on one side, you have people saying she was clearly being weird about race. And on the other side, she literally asks about braids. What are we doing? And then the response videos started coming. And when I tell you there were many response videos, I am not joking. People really took this very personal. Because once the original video started going viral, people didn't just leave comments. They started making entire videos about it. And according to Shay, the video went from around 600 likes to roughly 2 million within about 48 hours. And that is an insane amount of attention for a video that was basically just asking how much do you black girls pay for braids?
How much do you Mexican girls pay for your highlights? That's it right there. It wasn't that she said black. It's that she said you. You black girls. That's what made it sound like a slur.
Actually, my fellow white women, they are serious. It's very sad, but it's true. Black women, to answer your question though, because everybody on the internet is avoiding your question, but they want to get mad that you said the word black, right? They're deflecting. This is what they always do. I've been doing this for years, my fellow white woman. But to answer your question, the reason why they get braids done every 3 to 4 weeks with fake braiding hair is because they don't like their own hair. They think they're bald-headed. Black women have hair that most times goes down to here. So if they just did braids with their natural hair, it will be floating right here. But in their words, they don't want to walk outside looking like a boy, looking bald-headed. So what do? They try to cover up their insecurities and put on wigs, weaves, and fake braiding hair. To answer your question, fellow white.
This is where I think things started getting more complicated, because now we weren't just talking about what she actually said. We are talking about what people believed she meant. And once a controversy reaches that point, the original video almost becomes secondary. Everyone starts creating their own interpretation of what happened. Some people were saying she was obviously being racist. Others were saying people were deliberately misinterpreting her. And then there were black women who were completely divided. One black woman made a response video saying she didn't even say black that aggressively.
Like, please don't cancel me, but like, she didn't even say black that aggressively. Like, she definitely put a little bit of an emphasis on it, but that's because she's talking about black people. I don't think it's that crazy. Am I too woke? Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's not too, like...
So her argument was basically that Shay put some emphasis on the word black, but that made serious sense because she was literally talking about black women. So this wasn't simply white people versus black people. Black women themselves were disagreeing with what they heard, and I think that matters because it shows how subjective tone can be. The exact same sentence can sound completely normal to one person and completely loaded to another. But again, what really caught me off guard is the fact that people started flipping the script. One of the more interesting responses came from a black woman who stitched the original video. She basically flipped the situation around. She changed it to, you can hear it for yourself.
How much do you black girls pay for braids?
How much do you white pay for coke and clip-ins?
And how much do you white be paying for a bleaching tone? Because I'm trying to go blonde, but I don't know.
And honestly, I don't concur with this response. I understand being offended by the original video, but I don't think responding with white was necessary, because now you are taking a conversation that was originally about black girls and braids and turning it into another racial insult. And that's what bothered me about this response. If you felt like the original question was disrespectful, you could have addressed that without calling white women. To me, it just escalated the situation instead of actually making a point. But there was actually a white lady who responded to what this woman said.
How much do you black girls pay for braids?
How much do you white for coke and clipping?
I don't know why everyone and their mom is so offended over this first girl's video, because if you had let her continue on instead of just cutting her off after she said black girls, then you would have seen that she doesn't just emphasize the word black, she emphasizes random words throughout her sentence. This wasn't targeted at you. This isn't racism. Also, I don't even know what you mean by coke and clip-ins, so it's likely that I don't pay for those.
And you know, I actually think that she's making an important point here that gets completely lost when people rush to label everything racist. The original girl said black girls, yes, but that alone does not establish racist intent, especially when she continued speaking and clearly had a pattern of emphasizing different words throughout her sentence. Context matters. And I think there's a bigger conversation here about how we interpret language. We can acknowledge that someone felt uncomfortable hearing black girls without automatically declaring that the person who said it was being racist. Feeling offended is real, but feelings don't tell us someone's intent. And what makes the reaction even more interesting is that the response was, how much do white pay for coke and clippings. If the argument is that mentioning someone's race in the sentence is inherently offensive or racially charged, then that standard should be applied consistently. If it isn't, then we have to ask ourselves why one statement is immediately being interpreted in the worst possible way while the other is being defended as the response. Sometimes black is simply a descriptor. Sometimes white is simply a descriptor. Not every racial reference is a racial attack. And I think we're doing ourselves a disservice when we strip an entire sentence off of its context. Assume the worst possible intention and then use that assumption to justify calling someone racist. You can criticize someone's wording if you think it was clumsy. You can even say, I wouldn't have phrased it that way, but that's very different from turning an awkward choice of words into evidence of racism. Those are two completely different claims, and I think people need to be much more careful about the differences. Not every mention of race is racism. Not every awkward choice of words is microaggression. And not every person who phrases something differently than we would is secretly revealing some deeper prejudice. Because at this point, the conversation is becoming less about braids and more about whether people were applying different standards to racial language depending on who was saying it. Which brings us to another question. If the exact same wording can be interpreted completely differently depending on who says it, how much of this controversy is about the words themselves and how much is about the history and context behind them? Because there is a legitimate argument that historical context matters, right? There is also a legitimate argument that you cannot automatically assign malicious intent to someone because their wording made you uncomfortable. Both of those things can be true at the same time. And I don't think the people who were offended are crazy either. I also don't want to make the opposite mistake here, because I can already imagine someone watching this and thinking, so you're saying black women are just being sensitive? No. That's not what I'm saying. If you are black and you had heard that phrase and it made you uncomfortable, you are allowed to feel that way. You don't need permission from me. Language doesn't exist in a vacuum. History matters, tone matters, context matters, and sometimes people hear certain phrases through experience that another person simply doesn't have. But there's a difference between saying that made me uncomfortable and saying, therefore, this woman definitely intended to be racist. The first is a personal reaction, and the second is a claim about someone else's intentions. And I think we should be much more careful with the second one, because we can criticize someone's words without pretending we know exactly what was going on inside their head. But the backlash got so much worse. And honestly, this is where I think the internet needs to step a bit back. Because regardless of whether you thought the original video was offensive, threats are not acceptable response at all. You can criticize someone's wording, you can explain why something made you uncomfortable, you can call out behavior you genuinely believe is racist, you can make a response video, you can disagree with someone publicly, but sending someone threats over a TikTok about braids, that's not activism, that's harassment. And honestly, this is where I think online accountability can become completely detached from reality. Because even if someone genuinely says something racist, that does not make every form of retaliation acceptable. There has to be a line. And once people start sending threats, that line has been crossed. So, Shay did not just keep quiet. She responded. Initially, she didn't immediately jump online with a huge apology. Instead, she made a video saying that she was trying to figure out how to respond. She explained that she was talking to her black friends because she wanted to understand how she should address the issue. I understand that, because imagine waking up and finding out that a completely ordinary video you made has suddenly been interpreted by millions of people as racist. You'd probably want to understand what you supposedly did before responding to. And I actually think it's important that she didn't immediately start arguing with everyone. She took time to listen, and then eventually she apologized. And honestly, I don't think the apology was necessary, but I understand why she had to do it. She actually took responsibility for something specific. Here's the video.
I wanted to address my braids video real quick. I figured that Lonnie is prominent enough that
people will see this apology that need to see this apology, and I really did not wish to offend anyone whatsoever. I wanted to first and foremost apologize for my word choice and my tone. Specifically, my word choice was really exceptionally poor, and I am so sorry. I recognize now that when you pair a word like you with a racial descriptor, like you black girls, like I did in my video, that totally adds such a negative connotation. It, especially considering the historical significance in the US, especially with black people, by saying something like, you know, you black girls, I unconsciously nodded back to you people or you black people, those phrases that are used to be insanely racist, be, you know, marginalized groups, demean groups, demonized groups. And even though that was my intention, I am a creator with a platform. I have to be responsible for those things. I have to be aware and educated and all of that. Like, it, you know, really looks really horrible, especially for the people that don't know me in real life, when I say this phrase and it's like separating, it's me othering a group. It's me being like me versus the audience. And I am so sorry if that word choice combined with my tone offended anyone. Unfortunately, my tone and my word choice really corrupted the intention of my original video, which was asking if how much Zendaya is paying for braids is, you know, a normal amount. As someone who never touches her hair, the only thing that I knew about hair was that my sister goes in for a bleach and tone $200 every 6 to 8 weeks. So the price when she said it was $400 and I see her changing her hair every 3 weeks shocked me, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like, is this how much you guys pay, or is it just because she's an influencer in LA and stuff like that? I did not want braids myself at all. This question is not coming from a place of judgment. If anything, it's coming from like wondering if there are any kind of injustices in the beauty industry, because that, I don't know, it just seemed a little unfair. Obviously now I know that braids can last 2 months, but in the moment I did not know that, and I'm so sorry if the intentions appeared off, especially paired with my poor tone and word choice in the beginning of the video. I totally understand how this video kind of, people were very, very bothered by it. So I apologize. I sincerely apologize. And yeah, that's definitely something that I'm going to be way more careful of in the future.
And that's an important distinction, because an apology doesn't necessarily mean I agree with every accusation that was made against me. Sometimes an apology simply means I understand that the way I said something hurt people and I could have communicated it better. And I think that's a distinction we've lost online, because somehow we are now at a point where people think an apology only counts if someone completely accepts the version of events that the internet has created for them. But that's not really accountability. And that brings me to what I think is actually the bigger issue here, because this entire controversy isn't really about braids anymore. It's about what happens when the internet decides who you are before you've had a chance to explain yourself. We are living in a time where people can see a 10-second clip and immediately decide who someone is. No context, no investigation, no room for misunderstanding, no room for awkward wording, just you are racist. And once that label sticks, everything becomes evidence. Your apology, fake. Your explanation, an excuse. Your silence, guilty. Your response, attention seeking. Delete the video, you're hiding something. Keep the video up, you are farming engagement. It becomes impossible to win. And I think that's one of the most dangerous parts of online outrage, because accountability is supposed to be about correcting behavior. It isn't supposed to be about destroying someone's entire identity. Now, I want to talk about something that comes up constantly in conversations like this. Intent versus impact. You can have good intentions and still hurt someone. That's true. If someone tells you that something you said hurt them, you don't have to respond with, well, I didn't mean it that way, so you are wrong. You can listen. You can understand why they interpreted it that way. You can do better next time. And I think she's apology actually did that. She didn't need to agree that she was secretly being racist. She acknowledged that the wording could have sounded different from how she intended it. And honestly, that's probably the healthiest way to handle something like this, because none of us are perfect communicators. Sometimes you say something and realize afterwards, oh, I can actually see how that sounded so bad. That doesn't automatically make you a horrible person or a racist. It makes you human. But there's a limit. At the same time, I think we have to be careful about turning every uncomfortable interaction into proof of someone's character. Because if every awkward sentence becomes evidence of racism, if every poorly worded question becomes evidence of hatred, if every mistake becomes evidence that someone is secretly a terrible person, then eventually we are not holding people accountable. We are just looking for reasons to punish people. And the internet is particularly dangerous for this because outrage spreads much faster than nuance. White woman asks questions about braids isn't particularly existing, but white woman caught being racist to black women. Now suddenly everybody wants to watch. The more extreme interpretation gets, the more attention, the more stitches, the more comments, and the more engagement. And once hundreds of people have already decided what happened, the nuance becomes almost impossible to recover. There are absolutely situations where someone is being openly racist. There are situations where people deserve to be called out. There are situations where an apology isn't enough. I'm not arguing against accountability. I'm arguing against the idea that every controversy needs a villain. But maybe we don't always need to jump from "I didn't like what she said" to "this person is racist." So while doing my research for this video, I came across a black creator who said something that genuinely caught my attention. A black girl had posted a video from inside Lululemon with the caption, "It's something about white people in beauty supply stores that doesn't sit right with me." And then this creator responded by flipping the situation around. He basically asked, if a white girl made the exact same type of comment about black girls in Lululemon, would you people react the same way?
All right, let's flip the script again. Imagine a white girl was in Lululemon and posted the same thing saying, something about black girls in Lululemon does not sit right with me. The internet and a bunch of you guys would absolutely lose your minds. And then a bunch of you would even go on and try to cancel her and ruin this girl's life. But a black girl can say something like this and we just, okay, whatever. Again, this is another example of black privilege. I don't understand how you can win as a white person in today's society. I really don't. Because if you don't partake in black culture, well, then you're not accepting of cultures and you're racist. But if you do partake in black culture, then it's cultural appropriation and you're stealing stuff from black people. So then if you see that and you don't partake in anything because you're worried about that, well, you're also a racist. Because again, you're not inclusive. So it seems like all roads lead back to racism. And white supremacy, I forgot. Let's not forget, if you move out of an area, it's white flight. If you move in, it's what? Gentrification. I don't see how you win. And today, I really don't. That has got to be annoying. It doesn't make sense to me.
And this is where I think the conversation gets interesting, because his argument raises a question that I don't think we can just dismiss, because I feel like sometimes we're so quick to react to who said something that we don't even stop to ask whether we would have had the same reaction if the roles were reversed. When it comes to racial comments, should we judge statements itself, or does race and historical context about the person saying it change how we understand the statement? Because if we are going to say that context matters, where exactly do we draw the line? And more importantly, can something be prejudiced when it's directed at white people, or does racism require a specific historical power structure behind it? Honestly, I think that's something that we should think about. We need to be able to criticize people without dehumanizing them. We need to be able to acknowledge someone's feelings without automatically declaring them correct about another person's intentions. Because what happened to Shay is a perfect example of how quickly a tiny innocent moment can become an enormous internet spectacle. A question about braids became a conversation about racism. A conversation about racism became response videos. Response videos became millions of views, and millions of views became harassment. And eventually, the person at the center of this had to publicly explain herself over towards black girls. That's what I have to say about this video, but I want to know what you think. Did Shay genuinely say something racially insensitive, or do you think people took a completely innocent question and read something into her tone that wasn't there? Let me know what you think in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe, because we have a lot of more internet drama to unpack. I'll see you in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching.